She started answering me like a customer service bot. A week of "can you grab paper towels?" and the sink's leaking again, and silence for everything else. Not a "how was your day?" Not even a shrug in my direction unless she needed something carried, fixed, paid, or scheduled. She'd drift past me in the kitchen like I was a coat rack, and then send a text from the couch asking for tea. I was still making dinner, still changing the air filters, still pretending this was a phase. Then she told our neighbor, loud enough for me to hear through the open window, "He's good for errands." That sentence landed like a tool dropped on concrete. Sharp, obvious, final. If I'd known where that week was headed, I would have started counting sooner. Saturday morning, I laid 2 mugs on the counter and tried a normal tone. "You want eggs or oatmeal?" She reached around me, snagged her keys, and didn't even look. "Can you drive me to Ashley's at 2? I don't want to deal with parking." "And good morning to you too." I turned off the burner. "There's a ride app on your phone." "Ryan, I asked for one thing." She finally glanced up, exasperated like I'd missed a deadline. "You're already going to Home Depot." "It's on the way." "Put it on the calendar," I told her, wiping the stove. "If it's on the calendar, I'll plan for it. If it's not, I won't." "Wow, you need a calendar entry to be helpful now." She laughed, and it wasn't friendly. "You're really leaning into middle management." "Helps me not miss things," I said, "and keeps me from being a taxi by default." She slid her phone across the island toward me. "Here, put it on yourself." "I'm running late." I left the phone where it was. "I'm not scheduling your life for you, Mel. Don't make this a thing." It already is a thing. I angled my body toward the fridge and stuck a sticky note under the magnet. Requests. 24 hours notice. Calendar required. We're adults. This is basic. She stared at the note like I'd hung a warning sign over her head. "You're unbelievable. You're acting like I'm a problem to manage." "You're not a problem," I said. "The behavior is." "That's the same thing." "No," I answered. "It's the difference between fixing a sink and replacing the house." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever. I'll get a ride from someone who doesn't need paperwork." "Do that," I said, and rinsed the pan. "While you're out, the card on the gym auto payment is changing. If you want me to cover it, send the request with the date. I'll confirm or I won't." She snorted. "You're cutting off the gym now? Petty." "I'm separating budgets," I replied. Petty is hiding behind silence and then popping out when it's time to swipe. She walked out without answering. I finished my eggs alone, crossed out our standing Thursday dinner from the shared calendar, and sent a group text to our friends, shifting my schedule. "See you all next week." Then I took my truck into the shop for an oil change, because if I was going to reorganize my life, I'd start with the things that actually kept moving. By the time I got back, she'd left a list on the counter. Trash bins, lawn, pick up my package, Alfredo sauce, call the handyman. I took a pen and drew a line through everything that had her name on it. I wrote, "Items in your column. Use calendar." Then I set my phone face down and went to the garage to sharpen drill bits. The quiet out there had more respect in it than our living room. The next weekend, our friend Mike had a barbecue. He's an electrician with a yard that looks like a picnic ad, 2 long tables, kids running loops, dogs sniffing everything. I showed up with a cooler and a bowl of slaw. Melissa came separately, late, dressed like the party was for her. She walked over while I was turning sausages. "Hey, can you run back to the house and grab my denim jacket? The one with the silver buttons." "Put it on the calendar," I told her, without looking up. "For next time. It's 90 degrees. I'm asking for a jacket, and you want a calendar." She grinned at Lindsay from 2 doors down like we were doing improv. This is what living with a project manager looks like. You have to submit requests in triplicate. Lindsay did a polite laugh and sipped her lemonade. Mike raised an eyebrow at me from behind the grill like, "You good?" I set the tongs down and faced Melissa so the table could hear. "New rule," I said. "Effective immediately. I'm not your driver, runner, or spare wallet. Anything you need from me gets a day of lead time and goes on the calendar. If it's not on there, it's not happening." She blinked, thrown off by the tone. Calm, flat, final. "You're announcing policies at a barbecue?" "I'm clarifying expectations where they keep getting violated." I lifted the lid to let smoke roll away. "We're both less confused this way." "That's condescending." "It's English." I poured myself iced tea. "You want a plate?" She hesitated, eyes flicking to everyone listening. "Sure." I placed chicken, corn, and a roll on a plate and handed it over. "Enjoy." She stood there a second, then softened her voice. I'm sorry I snapped earlier, she said, almost whispering. It's been a long week. There it is, Mike muttered behind his teeth, barely audible. I kept my face neutral. Noted, I told her. Enjoy the party. Later she circled back with 2 folded napkins and an almost shy tone. I made you a plate, she said, setting it by my elbow. The potato salad you like. I glanced at it. Thanks. I shouldn't have joked like that. She dug the toe of her sandal into the grass. I was being dramatic. It was a joke, I said. Next time, skip the show. She nodded fast, as if relief was a decision. Do you want to do breakfast tomorrow? We could try that new place on Maple. I've got a job walkthrough at 9, I said. Put it on the calendar. Right, she answered, smile getting brittle. Calendar. As the sun went down, people drifted to beanbags and blamed the mosquitoes for leaving. In the truck, my phone buzzed. Melissa, thanks for being patient today. Also, could you cover my studio package this week? They raised the rate, and I don't want to miss the discount. Attached was a link to something called a wellness intensive, 3 months prepaid. I typed back, budgets are split. If you want my contribution, send the number and the date. I'll let you know. She didn't reply. I drove home with the windows down and the stereo off. Monday she showed up at my job unannounced with coffee and a smile I hadn't seen in months. We were at the warehouse, checking equipment inventory. Dale, my foreman, was tallying filters on a clipboard. I turned around, and there she was, bright as a commercial. Surprise, she sang, holding up a cup. I thought you could use a pick-me-up. Dale shot me a look and wandered toward the loading dock. Thanks, I said, taking the cup. It was the right order. She'd been paying attention. Noted. She stepped closer like we were in a movie. I was thinking about yesterday. You were right to call me out. I've been off. Work's insane. I took it out on you. Work usually is. I can do better, she said softly. We both can. I want us to be easier. Easier would be fine, I answered. Speaking of, she said, and pulled a form from her tote. Membership at the studio. They offered me a package if I signed today. Could you just co-sign the application? It helps the credit check. I'll cover the monthly, obviously. There it was. The tenderness had a bill stapled to it. I glanced at the form, then set it on the shelf. No. She blinked. No. Not co-signing, I replied. Not covering. Not putting my name on anything I don't control. You don't trust me to pay $80 a week. Her voice went sharp around the edges. This isn't about $80. It's about a pattern. You disappear until there's a sign-up involved. She drew in a breath like she'd been slapped. Then she gave me the sweetest smile I'd seen since our wedding photos. Okay, she said lightly. You're being cautious. I get it. She leaned in and pecked my cheek like we were fine. Dinner tomorrow? She asked. I'll cook. Put it on the calendar, I told her, and she laughed like it was our inside joke. Then she left a lipstick mark on my cheek I wiped off on a paper towel the second she turned. The next morning the silent routine returned, tighter, uglier. She moved around me like I was a transparent shape in her kitchen. If I asked a straight question, I got "we'll see" or "later," unless she needed a favor. Then I got exact clock times. Pick up my package at 3. Get the car washed before 6. She'd stopped talking about us and started scheduling me like staff. I took the hint and stopped auditioning for a conversation. I cooked for one. I moved into the guest room with a 3-sentence text, taking space for clarity. This is not punitive. It's boundaries. I switched my direct deposit into my own account and set up a monthly transfer for the mortgage and shared utilities with a note on the memo line. Base expenses only. I canceled our couple brunches. I informed Mike and Lindsay and 2 other friends. Hit me directly for plans. I'm not filtering invites through Melissa anymore. And I put a whiteboard on the fridge. Across the top, I wrote day and drew 29 little boxes. Day 1. She dropped a pile of laundry next to the machine and left. Day 3. She asked if I could swing by the store on my way back from work for almond milk, then spent dinner on her phone. Day 7. She texted me from the couch while I was 8 feet away at the table. The sink is making a sound. Day 12. She laughed at a meme and tilted it toward me, then turned the screen when I leaned in. Day 15. She came home with new pillows and asked if I could carry them up, then went to bed without a word. Day 19. She announced at the doorway, "Don't wait up," and left me with the dog she always said wasn't hers. Day 22. She asked me to fill out a form for a delivery because you're better with those. No, please. No, thank you. Just that dismissive wave like my time belonged to whoever snapped. Interesting strategy, Dale said when I told him, my voice flat, between low doubts. What's the goal on her end? Control, I said. Attention on her terms. Make me jump to get crumbs. And your goal? Finish the board, I answered. Then finish the marriage. He weighed that and nodded once. Need a hand moving anything, you call me. On day 28, I made a list of what I'd bought since we got married. The living room set, the dining table, the bed, the TV, half the kitchen gear, the washer and dryer, most of the tools, my truck, the grill. I pulled original receipts from the folder I keep like an old man, labeled and dated. I booked movers for Saturday morning. I called storage and confirmed the unit. I called the bank and shifted the last auto pay off my card. I made a second list titled Leave, the things she'd bought or owned, a few decorations, a lamp, a mirror, a rug that shed. It wasn't cruel. It was accurate. On day 29, I woke early, showered, shaved, and drove to the florist that opens at 7. I bought a bouquet in her colors, white lilies, pale pink stuff she liked, green drape. I set it in our kitchen vase and wrote a note in block letters. Thank you for the best month of our marriage. I slid it between the stems where she couldn't miss it. Then I placed a manila envelope beside the flowers with a second note on top. Now let's make this the best year of my life. Inside were divorce papers I'd filled out, the sections I could fill without a courtroom, and a clean list of assets with checkboxes next to mine and blanks next to hers. I placed my house key on top. At 8:30, I heard her step into the kitchen. Cabinet doors opened. A mug clinked. Silence stretched, the kind that tells you someone's read something that cancels their morning. Then, like a storm breaking, her voice ripped through the house. What is this? I walked in with my coffee and set it down. Words, I said. You bought me flowers to say you're ending our marriage. She shook the note in the air like it was a ticket. You think this is cute. I think it's honest. I nodded at the envelope. That's the plan. You're dramatic, she snapped. You're doing this because I asked you to help more? Because I wanted a jacket at a barbecue? No, I said. I'm doing it because you haven't spoken to me in 28 days unless you needed a tool, a ride, or a number. I'm not a vending machine. She pointed at the paperwork. You're delusional. I'm not agreeing to any of this. That's fine, I replied. You don't have to agree. You just have to understand. Understand what? That I'm not staying, I told her. I'm moving my things on Saturday. After that, any coordination goes through email. You're not taking my furniture. I'm taking mine, I corrected. I slid the receipts across the island. It's all dated. You can keep whatever's yours. This is petty. It's boundaries, I said, and picked up my coffee. We do better with clear ones, remember? She stared at me with a look I used to see when an appliance manual confused her, furious that the world didn't rearrange itself for her convenience. You're not walking out. Watch me, I said, and left for work. She called at 9. I let it go to voicemail. She called at 10, 11, and noon. At 12:30 I answered. You coward, she started, voice spiked. You can't decide something like this without a conversation. We've had 28 days of conversation, I replied. You delivered your lines. I heard them. I was stressed. I needed space. You're punishing me for taking care of myself. No, I said. I'm protecting myself from being used. How can you be this cold? She barreled on. After everything I've done for you, after how much I help you, you're going to dump me like trash? You don't help me, I said, and the simplicity of it seemed to hit harder than any insult. You direct me, and when I don't jump, you freeze me out. I'm not living like that. You think any woman would put up with your little rules? She sneered. Calendar entries and budgets. You're a robot. I'm a man with a line, I told her. And you crossed it on purpose. You're not taking the TV, she snapped. I am, I answered. It's on my receipts. I'll call your mother, she threatened, reaching for anything. She'll congratulate me, I said. We're done here. Email from now on. If you hang up on me. I ended the call. Dale watched me slide the phone into my pocket and lifted his chin. I lifted mine back. The rest of the hour tasted clean. She called at 1. I ignored it. She called at 2. I silenced the phone and set it in the drawer. At 3, I loaded duct and filters. At 4, I checked the diesel in the truck. At 5, I drove to storage and met the manager who held the gate. looked at my paperwork, and said, "Unit's ready." I nodded, measured the space with a carpenter's tape, and pictured my couch exactly where it would go. Then I went home, made a sandwich, and slept in the guest room with the door shut and the lock turned. The next morning, I was at Mike's early to pick up 2 moving dollies he'd offered. He handed them over in the driveway and didn't do the "are you sure" dance. "You want extra hands?" he asked. "I booked a crew," I said. "But if you feel like carrying a box, I won't stop you." "I'll swing by," he said. "You don't have to do this with only strangers watching." "Strangers are fine," I replied. "They don't ask for explanations." At 9, the movers rolled up. I met them at the curb, pointed to the living room, and handed over a list with checkboxes that matched the receipts. "Everything with a checkbox goes," I told them. "Everything without stays." At 9:05, Melissa's car pulled in fast like a siren. She strode across the yard in sunglasses and a fury she probably thought looked like confidence. The neighbors pretended to weed. "What are you doing?" she barked. "Executing a plan," I said. "It's Saturday. You can't just strip the house." "I can take what I bought," I answered. "That's what I'm doing." She moved to block the movers. "Leave that." The crew chief looked at me. I shook my head once. "Take it," I said. "We're on a schedule." She swiveled back to me. "If you walk out with this, you're never coming back." "I know," I replied. "You think you're so tough," she hissed. "You need your little fans to clap for you." "What I need," I said, "is to live without contempt in my kitchen." She laughed, harsh and weird. "You and your big words. They're short," I said. "You just don't like what they mean." Mike arrived then and gave me a nod. He didn't look at her. He picked up a box and followed the mover to the truck. That simple, that plain. She kept calling every hour while we loaded. I didn't pick up. At noon, when the crew took a water break and she was leaning on the fence with her arms crossed like a traffic cop, I answered one more time. "Say what you need to say," I told her. "You're embarrassing yourself," she shot back. "You're throwing a tantrum with an audience." "This is not a tantrum," I replied. "It's logistics. You're abandoning me." "You abandoned the conversation a month ago," I said. "I'm just catching up." "Fine," she snapped. "Leave." "I don't care." "You care," I said calm. "About the control. About the audience. About the sound of your own outrage." "I don't care about you," she tried. "That part is mutual now," I told her and clicked off. Then I put the phone in airplane mode and went back to work. By 2, we'd loaded the truck. I walked back into the kitchen, straightened the flowers, and placed the second note on the envelope where she'd moved it in a show of defiance. "Now let's make this the best year of my life." I turned, took one last survey. Not sentimental, not sweeping, just checking for boxes, and walked out past her without comment. "Ryan." She stepped in front of me on the walkway. "You're not even going to try to fix this." "I did," I answered. "For 28 days. "You mean your rules?" She added air quotes with both hands. "You mean your threats?" "I mean that I asked for respect," I told her. "You gave me silence with a shopping list." She snorted. "Good luck finding someone who puts up with you." "Luck has nothing to do with it," I said. "Standards do." She stared at me like she was waiting for me to blink. I didn't. I stepped around her, set my keys on the porch rail, and got in the truck. I spent the afternoon at the storage unit, moving furniture into neat rows. The couch went against the back wall, the TV next to it, the dining table vertical against a pad, the boxes stacked with labels facing out. Order calms me. It makes everything simple. When we finished, I tipped the crew, shook their hands, and stood a minute in the fluorescent light. It wasn't triumph. It was completion. That night, around 7, she called again. I let it ring out. A text followed, long, packed with blame and creative insults. An audio message came after that. Raised voice, a demand, a claim that I'd stolen items. I played it once. Then I called her. "Everything I took is mine," I said when she answered, breathless from yelling. "I have the receipts. You have email for anything else. This number stays off." "You have no heart," she shouted. "You never did." "You know that's not true," I replied. "You just thought you'd set the terms forever." "What do you want me to do, beg? Cry?" "Neither," I said. "I want you to stop." "You're hurting me," she tried, throwing it like a net. "No," I said. "I'm just done. You'll regret this." That's optimism I can't share. I paused. "We're finished, Melissa. Keep the silence." "I'll keep my life." I ended the call and blocked the number. I slept in a motel 2 towns over, Not because I couldn't have slept anywhere else, but because I wanted a door I paid for and a bed that didn't argue. In the morning, I met a realtor at a small craftsman place I'd been eyeing for a while. 2 bedrooms, a garage good for tools, a yard that didn't try to impress anyone. I put down a deposit and set a move-in date. I texted Mike, "Be at my place in 2 weeks. Bring the grill tools." On Tuesday, I checked my email and found a long message from Melissa, alternating attacks and bargains. I replied with 2 sentences. All further communication by email. Please list any items you believe are yours. Then I closed the laptop and went to work. The hours got quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not empty, quiet. I finished jobs faster. I ate lunch at the shop with Dale and the crew. Nobody asked me to apologize for the way I opened a sandwich. In the evenings, I drove by the Craftsman and watched the sunset hit the front porch. I bought a second-hand table from a guy in a garage and sanded it smooth until it looked like what a kitchen table is supposed to look like. A place where people talk or shut up without keeping score. By the second weekend, I'd moved in. Mike carried the other end of the couch and gave a satisfied grunt when it slid into place. Lindsay stopped by with a plant and a warning to please don't let this die. I promised nothing. I grilled burgers, handed out paper plates, and didn't tell any stories for effect. When the food was gone and the yard empty, I stood by the kitchen sink and looked at the table, at the couch, at the tools lined on the garage wall. It wasn't much. It was mine. I heard about Melissa indirectly. A mutual friend mentioned she'd given up the house. The gym froze her membership for non-payment. She was renting a room with a girl from her studio and picking up shifts hostessing at a restaurant that was never empty and always loud. She told people I'd blindsided her, of course. People love a headline. I didn't correct it. The people who know me already knew. A month later, on a Saturday morning that smelled like coffee and cut wood, a woman named Kara from the supply yard stopped by to drop sample catalogs. We ended up talking about paint finishes and weekend hikes. She didn't lead with demands or silence. She didn't need a calendar to treat me like a person, though I still use one because it keeps me sane. We kept it simple. We made plans, then kept them. No tests. No theater. Sometimes I drive past the old place on my way to the shop. The porch is empty now. The curtains she picked are gone. It looks like a stage after the audience leaves, just boards and dust. That's what control looks like when you cut the sound. Set pieces. People want a moral. They want a speech about lessons and growth and closure. I don't do speeches. I do statements of fact. She ignored me for 28 days until the only word left between us meant stop. On day 29, I put flowers on the counter and gave her the clearest sentence I've ever written. Then I walked out and made good on the second one. I'm not sorry for that. I'm not angry anymore either. I'm busy. I've got a house that fits, a truck that starts, a shop that hums, friends who don't need a show, and a woman in my life who speaks in sentences that end without knives. That's not a happy ending. That's just an ending that I chose. And that's enough.